Hey, this is Tom. Welcome to another episode of Your Move where I analyze chess.com member games for free. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe this video. And check out my website, mvpchess.com, or by scanning the QR code below. Today we're going to be looking at a game submitted by chess.com user ChessKai538, who is rated 1,000 from Jordan, and his opponent is rated 1068 from India. Okay, let's jump right in. After e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, we have a Spanish game on the board. And the most common reply is for black to either play knight f6, the Berlin defense, which is really common in top level play, or by playing a6, Morphy's defense. But black opts for pawn to d6 in this position, the super solid Steinitz defense, named after the first world chess champion, Wilhelm Steinitz. It was also employed fairly often by the third world chess champion, Jose Raul Capablanca. Now, in this position, white makes a very peculiar decision, and that is after d6, he retreats the bishop back to c4. Basically opting to play an Italian game a tempo down. We really want to avoid moves like this in the opening, specifically moving the same piece more than once. It would have been much better for white here to continue with the thematic d4, okay, taking advantage of this pin, playing knight c3, and getting himself castled. But instead we have bishop c4, and black plays h6. Okay, so this is another slow move, and we need to remember that our chess moves are like commodities, and we really want to make sure that we're not wasting them, and we're getting the most value out of our opening moves. I think black was playing h6 because white dropped the bishop back to c4, and he was worried about a knight coming to g5 and some sort of incursion on the f7 square. But black could have prevented this idea and also continued with his development by playing the simple bishop e7. Okay, there's no knight g5 here. So h6 was a bit of a slow move, and black had a good opportunity to get a nice position after this wasted tempo by white. But okay, h6. And white plays h3. I think white's worried about a bishop coming here. But again, white does not need to make that move. I think white can continue with d3, castles, knight bd2, normal Italian type moves. Now that we've kind of transposed to this opening in a very odd way. Okay, but after h3, knight f6. Good job by black. Good developing move, knight c3, and a6. Okay, another slow pawn move on the side of the board. I think with the intention of playing b5, but again, it would have been much better in this position for black to play bishop e7, get himself castled, and then have a look around. But after a6, castles b5, I think black's idea is to play a quick b5, b4, and maybe try to undermine the defense of this e4 pawn, but white's got it covered. Has to give up the light square bishop, which is unfortunate. And we have an exchange on d5, and black challenges this knight with bishop e6. We have d3. Black captures, giving white a double pawn, but it is going to kick the knight. So it's important to move this knight to the correct square. In the game, black played knight d4, which, as we'll see, white didn't take advantage of this move, but I think white could have developed a nice initiative and probably gotten a pretty solid advantage from this move. I think best here for black is just dropping the knight back here. and then maybe rerouting the knight to g6. You could even consider a move like knight b8, like you would see in the Breyer variation of the Spanish, and just rerouting the knight like this back into the game. That could have been a solution for black as well. But instead, black throws the knight into d4, thinking that this is a more active move. But the problem here is that black has given himself a pretty weak pawn on d4. Over to you in this position. White to play. How can white seize the initiative based on black's inaccurate move, knight to d4? Pause your videos. Yeah, so I think white could have gotten a nice initiative in this position by playing queen g4, attacking this pawn. And after queen f6, defending, I really like this standard pawn thrust a4, which we see so often in like these type of Spanish structures where black has played a6, b5. I think it's even more effective now because this rook on a8 is hanging. So if black just mindlessly continues with development here, white's just winning a pawn because of this pin. Black probably doesn't want to capture here. Excuse me. Black doesn't want to capture here because after b8, rook takes a4, the a6 pawn becomes a weakness. So I think in this position, we would probably see the move b4, just trying to keep things closed. But then after rook e1, bishop e7, and then maybe the move here, rook e4, we're putting pressure here on the d4 pawn. We could maybe, depending on how black proceeds, even put this pawn on b3, route this bishop to b2, and take on d4 with the bishop. And it's important to note here, if black were to castle, white's got this really nice move, bishop takes h6, and after queen takes h6, rook takes e7. This pawn is weak. White is ready to play rook ae1 with complete control over the e-file, and I think white's doing really, really well here. But let's go back. Instead of queen g4, white played rook e1, and after bishop e7, played c3, allowing black to exchange off this weak pawn on d4. Okay, so this was definitely a mistake by white. We don't want to play c3 and allow black to liquidate this weakness. We want to play a move like queen g4 and try to target this and win a pawn. Although in this position, it might be a little bit more difficult to achieve. But after c3, black alertly captures on c3. Good job getting rid of that weak pawn on d4. And after castles c4, black decides to capture here on c4. I would have liked to, if I'm black, maintain the pawn tension here. Maybe just play a simple improving move like rook e8. White never really wants to capture here, right? C takes b5, a takes b5. White's left with these ragged pawns. So I would have liked to seen black keep the tension a little bit more in this position and not voluntarily fix white's potentially weak double pawns. But okay. After dc, bishop f6, the bishop's on a really nice diagonal here. So that was a good way to improve the scope of this bishop. Rook b1. Black just challenges on the b file. Okay? And with two open files here, the open b file, the open e file, in a position like this, you're looking at the heavy pieces being exchanged. And that's pretty much what happens in the game. White decides to capture on b8. And then after bishop a3, rook e8, we have more exchanges here. And we end up in this kind of interesting endgame, this queen and bishop endgame. Black brings the queen to an active square on b5, attacking this bishop on c5. Good move. And white forces the exchange of queens. So very quickly, we liquidated into a bishop and pawn endgame, where we don't have opposite color bishops. We have two dark square bishops here. I look at this position, and if anybody has a slight pull here, I think it's white, just because this pawn on c7, at least for the time being, is kind of fixed on a dark square. So I think white might get some annoying pressure on this c7 pawn, whereas white's pawns, the pawn on d5, the pawn on a2, are both on light squares. So black has less targets to attack in this position. This bishop kind of looks good, but now everything's kind of vacated this long diagonal, and it's really not strategically important anymore. So black advances on the king side, and both players begin centralizing their kings, and white correctly plays bishop a5, forcing black to defend and tie his bishop down. And then and only then he continues with king e2, looking to bring this king to the queen side. So I think white's king is gonna reach the queen side a little bit faster than black. So black needs to be careful here. After f5, g4. If I'm white here, if my opponent has just made a pawn move g5, has just made the pawn move f5, I'm saying, okay, you're not really prioritizing the activity of your king in the endgame. I'm just going to go ahead and play king d4, right? And try to invade on the queen side and make it as tough on black as possible. Okay, but instead, after f5, white decides to play g4, and after takes, plays f3. Again, I really think what white should be doing here is not playing with his pawns. It's let's get this king and try to infiltrate black's queen side as quickly as possible and start pressuring these potentially weak pawns. Like if you're able to, while the king's still over here on the king side, if you're able to win this c7 pawn, that could be curtains for black with this pass d pawn running. But f3, that's a little bit slow. And black takes this opportunity to start liquidating pawns on the king side, which he does here. And white begins to bring the king over the queen side. Again, I think to have any hopes of winning chances here, I think this is a little too late for white. I would have liked to have seen white again press the king into the enemy queen side while black was making, I think, a few too many pawn moves on the king side. But black is defending really tenaciously, getting the king into a nice central position, pressuring the d5 pawn. This is really good endgame play by black, with the king especially. And white signals his intention to take on c7 here. Black makes a waiting move. White pushes. Black makes another waiting move. And we have this exchange on c7. So, over to you in this position. We've reached a very theoretical king and pawn endgame here. White's king is slightly more active than black's. Notice it's white to move in this position. So white's going to be able to take this pawn on a6. There's really nothing black can do about it. What is the correct evaluation for this position? Is white winning, or is this game a draw? pause your videos and try to calculate this king and pawn endgame out to its conclusion. This is a really good calculation exercise. Okay, congratulations if you correctly determined that this endgame is actually a draw. After king b6, king c4, king takes a6, king c5. I think what black has correctly assessed here is that rook pawns are very drawish in nature. And the reason being is the king's mobility is restricted because it's on the side of the board, right? If there was some magical Z file here, right, next to the A file, and the king can go over to that file and have mobility both to the left and the right of the pawn, it wouldn't be a draw. But here, obviously, that would violate the rules of chess. Black is able to keep this king boxed in. And this is a really good drawing technique. There's really two ways to draw this position when you're the pawn down. If you can get your king to the A8 square, it's a draw. It's a complete draw. Or even this B8 square. The other thing that you can do, as in this position, is if you can't make it there, you just kind of box the king in on the side of the board. And black does a really good job in this position, really critical move here, playing king c8. Only move. Really good job by black. If black had played king c6 in this position, white's winning, because white gets to bring the king to the b8, controls the promotion square, a7, a8, and it's over for black. So great job by black finding the only move in this position, king c8. And after king b6, we take control over the opposition. And after a7 in this position, for instance, king a8, the only way white can hold on to this a7 pawn is to play king a6, and the black king is stalemated. In the game, white played king b5 instead, but black had it under control. King a5, king b8, nice move, king b6, and then again, we don't want to bring our king to c8. That would be a huge mistake, because after a7, white has these squares under control and the a7 pawn is going through. So again, black finds the only move in this position, king a8, excellent job. And white finally pushes to a7, and of course king a6 would be a stalemate, as we discussed. In the game, white just played king c7, which gave up the pawn on a7. So the game was drawn by insufficient material. Really, really nice job by black holding this endgame. This was really a model way to draw a king and pawn endgame, especially when there's an extra rook pawn on the board. Really nice job of getting the king into the corner and finding a series of only moves to hold the half point. So I hope you enjoyed this analysis. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and check out my website, mvpchess.com, if you want to elevate your game. Thanks for watching.